And now episode 38. What happened to Sly's eye? Let's continue. And now for the recap. As you recall, they started down the path. We're talking about Judge, Bailey, and Marie. As they enter into the path, they squeeze through different openings. They finally get to the opening to see where the towers are, and they remember seeing this on the map. So they devise a plan. Marie turns everybody invisible with them, and they walk over to the tower before Time Matrix opens up. And there they are at the tower. Marie climbs up the tower, but she can't open it. She's not strong enough. The Judge uses his shield, like a surfboard, stands on it, and Bailey, and they lift up in the area, and they pull the vent off. In the meantime, they have this device that's going to tell them how many times it beeps. With lights on, it tells them when it's safe to enter in. Finally, it beeps, goes on. Marie is the first one through it because she's obviously the scout, and she's going to climb the walls and everything. She goes in there, and she sees Sly chained up in a cage, all bloodied up, and she just shocked. And then all of a sudden, he turns his head to just a certain point, and she sees he has a patch on his eye. She says, "A patch on it? Why is he wearing a patch? What happened to his eye?" Well, let's find out as the story continues. And of course, before that, here's a message from our sponsor, which is us and my brother. And now episode 38. Judge looks up briefly to her eyes and shakes his head slightly and says, "You don't want to know." Bailey looks mystified at her daughter Marie, who also wants some answers. Judge looks at his daughter's face, who banishes the same concern request as Judge surrenders to it. All right. He exhales in defeat. During a particular battle, Sly and I were being put in with battles with some of the soldiers' training exercises. At some point, we managed to get away and get the upper hand. It seemed that they didn't appreciate that. So in the end, they captured us and beat us with the rifle butts. Then they beat us again and again. That overall was not unusual. They did that a lot, especially when we were not cooperative. Sly always wanted to be forgiving and not resentful. I, of course, did not feel the same way. On this particular occasion, he wanted to help Cody spiritually by quoting the Bible. He had been talking to him for a while and believed he was making good progress. But Doug put an end to that real quick. "How did he do that?" asked Bailey with real concern. "He would ridicule Cody and Sly. Sly seemed to get under his skin a bit when he talked about his mother. Sly told him that he has transferred his own love for his mother to an object, his gun. He had some real issues that he needed to work on." "No," says Marie in disbelief. "He said that?" "Oh, yes. He said that and more. Then he told him that he needed to get past this addiction by prayer. It would be very difficult, but he must not give in to the addiction." Then he quoted the Bible with a verse from Mark. "What did he say?" asked Bailey, intrigued. He said, Mark chapter 9, verse 47 says, "If your right eye stumbles you, pluck it out." As Judge looks away in disgust. "No, he didn't." No, he did. But that dirty little Douglas did. Painfully excused the words of the judge as he drops his head away from his daughter. After a few moments of gasping and horror, Judge continues, the soldiers began beating us to the state of unconsciousness. When I awoke, I saw Doug with Sly's eyeball in his right hand. He looked at me, smiled wickedly, and dropped the eyeball to the ground and squashed it with his boot like a grape. Marie turns around as if she's going to be sick. She turns to her father and says, next time, I'm going to listen to you, Father. When you tell me something I don't want to hear. Next time, Judge says stoically. After a moment of cold reflection passes in the eyes of both Marie and Bailey are self-wiped, Judge continues with remorse. I wasn't able to heal him. I wasn't able to repair his eye no matter how hard I try. Bailey turns to the judge and says, why was that? Why couldn't you heal him like last time? Judge begins to reflect back as he says, it was explained to me by one of the men here in the lab this way. Our superpowers are all possible by means of different elements of science here. They are different from each other, and yet they are not. For instance, you, lover, as timeout, can run as fast as a cheetah and can freeze time for 5 seconds. But in truth, you can actually do neither. What actually happens is that a small window of subspace allows you to a hop, skip, and a jump forward is actually an illusion. When you enter subspace, you're being fast-forwarded like a videotape. Sometimes it's small for you only, and other times it's larger, like freezing time, as it were. My healing process works like yours, but in reverse, and is centralized to the exact injury. When I put my hands on the afflicted area, that tissue enters substates as well, and it does a hop, skip, and jump backwards, like rewinding a videotape. You see, I don't actually heal anybody or anything. I simply move the tissue or person back in time before it is damaged. My matrix allows me to do this up to 5 hours from the injury. With Sly, they kept me away from him for days. Not a happy time. There was nothing I could do. When we were finally reunited, and that just killed me inside. Marie tries to comfort her fathers with her eyes. Judge does not respond and continues to suffer silently with unwarranted guilt. Bailey tries to soften his remorse and to ease his pain by saying, I know Sly understands and doesn't blame you. Sly is an amazing man, Judge. Father, it's time. The box is blinking, replies Marie, focused on the task at hand. You ready? Asked Bailey fretfully. Yes. I can't wait to get out of this hot box air vent, quills Marie as she wipes a thin coat of moisture from her forehead. Wait, says Judge. I don't see the guard. Suddenly a flush of a toilet is heard by all as he exits the small room from his left and returns to his seat by the computer monitor. He resumes his attentive duties to the monitors once again. He looks up at his watch and for a quick second pulls out his feet up on the desk and pulls out a well-worn paperback called Short Stories by Donovan Divot. Judge uses his long arms and lifts the vent carefully as Marie turns invisible and begins to cling to the ceiling with moving slowly with one hand gripping the ceiling and the other hand carrying a small bottle of chloroform in her hand. She begins to unfasten the bottle of chloroform, and while holding her breath, making sure not to add to her own dizziness. Yet the fumes from the bottle does burn her eyes slightly, but she remains undaunted and moves carefully to the intended target. A small drop of sweat from the tip of her nose falls to the ground and lands right in the center of the open page of his book. He is startled and puts the book down and reaches for his gun and looks up. Marie drops from the ceiling on top of it and quickly wrestles the chloroform from her hand to his face. He begins to fall quickly to the ground and lays unconsciousness on the ground. Suddenly, the room lights begin flashing as an alarm goes off, screaming in all directions. He must have hit the switch before he blacked out, says Marie. She gets to her feet, while Bailey and Judge drop to their feet from above the vent and quickly tries to disable the alarms with no success. With flashing red lights flooding the room in all directions, she realizes they are going to have to act fast. Judge turns to his team and says, "We gotta move fast, Bailey. Look for a set of keys, Marie. Come with me. I need your help." Sly is beginning to wake up as he shakes his head free from any lingering cobwebs. Sly looks up at both Judge and Marie as his mouth falls open. "I can't believe my eyes. Is that really you?" Marie almost wants to cry when he says that about his eyes rather than his eye. Judge looks fiercely for the door as Sly remains sitting in his small box cage. Bailey appears out of nowhere and hands Judge the keys. Sly smiles with joy and says, "Bailey, you're alive too?" Judge was right all along. It's like the Bible always says. "Not right now, Sly," interrupts Judge briskly as he manages to open the door to the small cage and pulls out. He manages only to move him a few feet until he is stopped by another chain and locked fastened to the concrete floor. "Where did that come from?" asks Sly. Bailey starts to fiercely look for another key. Marie runs over to the monitors and says, "Hurry, Judge, they're coming from all directions." He grabs the keys and after examining them quickly says, "They're not here." "Can you break the chain with your shield?" asks Bailey. He shakes his head and says, "Not this chain, it's too thick. But the lock, I think I can pick the lock. I watched GQ pick mine and I think I can do it. It looks identical to the lock on the metal corset they had around my chest." "Let's go," says Marie as she makes her move over to the air conditioner vent. She reaches for it to open it when suddenly she's hit with a flow of electrical current and falls to the ground. "Judge, quick," says Bailey as she runs over to her daughter. "I don't think she's breathing." Judge leaps over to his daughter and puts one hand on her head and with the other hand on her chest where her heart is. His face grimaces in pain as if being tortured by a ferocious acid reflex as she slowly opens her eyes and begins to move. Judge tiredly hands her over to the wanting arms of her mother as she slowly moves back over to Sly. Bailey helps Marie over to the chair where the guard once sat and claims his seat. Bailey's eyes scan back and forth at the monitors as she replies with heightened anxiety, "Judge, hurry, better hurry. They're swarming in all directions, heading this way." Judge again starts working the lock with a little knife pin given to him previously by Bailey. With stunning success, he quickly opens the lock and pulls Sly out of it completely unscathed. Sly slowly stands to steady himself and replies tiredly, "What's the plan, Judge?" Judge wags his head and looks at him dryly and says, I was hoping you had one." Sly looks to the ground as Judge's leg and sees that his power suppressor is gone. A smile across his face as he says, I see you got yours off. If you can get mine off too, I believe I may just have a plan to get us out of here. I hope it's a good one, says Judge. Time is of the essence. Judge, hurry, says Bailey as Marie begins to stand and test her own legs again for action. Come on, Judge. Use our little tricks and get that power suppressant off me, urges Sly immediately. I need to be showbiz again, now more than ever before. It's the only way we can get through this. Judge wags his head and says, you're right. Marie moves to face her father as she says, so what are we going to do, Dad? There's nothing. There's going to be a small army outside this door in any minute, and they don't look very friendly, finishes Bailey. Okay, we'll deal with this thing on your leg later. We'll protect you. In the meantime, let's figure out a plan and get out of here, replies Judge with uncertainty. Sly tries to pull the device off again as well and as quickly recoils with a mild shock. He smiles to himself and says, well, just checking. He looks away and says a silent prayer. His eyes start to brighten as a thought seems to enter his head. He looks down again at his leg, still clinging to the power suppressant unit, and says, Mark chapter 9, verse 45 says, if your foot stumbles you, cut it off. It is finer for you to enter lame than to have 2 legs or feet with your whole body being pitched to Gehenna. Judge is not listening at all and is bothered once again by Sly again quoting the scripture. Bailey gasps at what she thinks he's saying. What are you saying, Sly? Asks Bailey wearily. What does he say? Episode 39 next time. Thank you for watching.